So, you got a visit visa to the US. Congratulations. Now, what are the plans? Are you sure you're going to come back to Pakistan? Or are you planning to stay and work for dollars in the US, like many others who wish to give themselves and their families a better, safe, and financially stable life? I have lived and worked in the US for almost 3 decades. In this video, I'll show you the entire process and the consequences of working and living in the US on a visit visa. I'll also show you the cost of living in the US in US dollars for approximately 3 years. I will also show you the income in US dollars you might earn in those 3 years as someone who does not have a valid work permit. I will also show you the legal ways to change your status from a visitor to a green card holder. So, stay tuned. Our desperation to give a good life to ourselves and to our families, even with the best of intentions, can lead to disastrous consequences if you go looking for shortcuts in life. Today's topic is both critical and sensitive for people with ambitions of getting out of Pakistan in search of a better life. It's about the journey many people from Pakistan and other countries consider undertaking. That is, migrating to the United States on a visitor visa with the intention of staying there permanently. Tawsif's was one such family. Tawsif was a banker in Lahore. His wife worked as a human resources manager for a reputable pharmaceutical company. They both had a decent above average life in Lahore with 2 kids. A boy 3 years old and a girl 5 years old. Like millions of other people, he had also heard and seen the lifestyle of Pakistanis living in America on the internet. Every Facebook post that he would see of his friends posting of their travels and having good time in America would make him uncomfortable with his above average lifestyle in Lahore. He knew he could easily get a US visit visa if he applied due to his decent job and his father's decent house where they lived. He had money for tickets and maybe a short vacation. But to live there in America, he needed much more. So, Tawsif insisted his parents to sell their house and give him his share in their inheritance. Like all caring parents, could not resist their only child and sold their house and gave him the money. And for themselves, they moved into a smaller rented house. He applied and got the US visit visa for himself and his entire family. His wife didn't want to leave her stable job in Lahore, but she also got along with when Tawsif insisted that I'm going this for you and for your children, for our children. He converted all 1 crore rupees, cash he was left from the sale of the parents' house, into US dollars, which came out to around 35,000 US dollars. This money was supposed to help him for some time once he landed in the US. He contacted a friend in New Jersey and asked him if he and his family could stay with them for some time until he got settled there in the US. His friend reluctantly said yes, without making him feel he didn't want to. Tawsif and his family lands in the US and arrives at the friend's house. They warmly welcome them. Now here, our story takes a tragic turn. Next day, when they wake up to police and ambulance sirens outside their friend's house, Tawsif hurries out the door and finds that they are taking his host, his friend, on a stretcher to the ambulance. By noon that day, they heard that their young friend had died of heart attack. Long story short, they are politely asked by the wife of their friend to make some other arrangements for living. Tausif runs around, contacts different people he could think of, and one refers him to a small one-room basement with no bathroom. They would have to use the common bathroom upstairs. In the US, most houses have a basement, but these basements can't be used for full-on living or sleeping. They are mostly work or entertainment spaces with no bathrooms. The rent for that basement room will be $600 per month. And remember, I told you, Tausif had brought in $35,000 with him. The clock on this money had already started ticking. More on Tausif's situation later in this video. First, let's take a closer look at the entire process of trying to settle in America on a visitor's visa. Imagine you are boarding a plane to the US with a visit visa in your hand, but filled with hopes and dreams of settling there permanently. But what waits for you there might not be what you expect. First thing first, entering the US on a visitor visa means you have promised the US government at the US Embassy in Islamabad or wherever that you will leave the US by a specific date. Overstaying can lead to severe legal consequences, including deportation and bans from re-entering the US for years or maybe forever. But you tell yourself, you are smart. You will never be caught. You will lie low. You will never be on the radar. You will never do anything illegal that catches anyone's attention. But it's not just about being caught. It's about others landing you in trouble. Living as an undocumented immigrant means living in constant fear and uncertainty. You can't react if someone is trying to be nasty with you or your family. You can't drive since you won't have any insurance or driver's license for some time. You won't call 911 even when you are in danger because you don't have any ID to show for when courts and police get involved. You won't go to a doctor if you get sick because you won't have medical insurance. In short, you have almost no legal rights whatsoever, and you can't build a stable life knowing at any moment everything can be taken away. Now, let's discuss the options to make some money through employment for basic survival. Without a proper work visa, finding legal employment is not even an option. Many end up in underpaid, exploitative jobs as cleaners, waiters, grocery store workers, or dog walkers with no protection or rights. No one will pay you full legal wage knowing your situation. So, here is a breakdown of expenses and possible under-the-table income that you might get. This will help you in your calculation. The agents who sell you these prospects of landing in the US for a huge sum of money won't tell you any of this what I'm going to tell you now. They will just butter up your hopes to get your money for their service charges, which is illegal in the first place. You don't have to give any money to anyone other than the government visa fee paid directly to the US Embassy. Anyway, here is the breakdown of the expenses and the possible income. You can do the math yourself after that. First, pre-departure costs. Visa application fee. As of 2023, the US visitor visa B1, B2 application fee is $160 per person. So for a family of 4, that's $640. Documentation and preparation. Costs for obtaining necessary documents, photos, and possibly hiring a consultant or lawyer can range widely. Let's estimate a low of somewhere between $500 to a high of $2,000. And now, travel costs. Flights. Airfare from Pakistan to the US varies greatly depending on the time of the year and how far in advance tickets are booked. You won't get a one-way ticket anyway. So the ticket price could be somewhere between $1,500 to $2,000. So for a family of 4, that comes around between $6,000 and $8,000. Now, the initial settlement costs in the US. Housing deposit and first month's rent. This can vary greatly depending on location, but expect to pay at least $2,000 to $400,000 to secure a place to live. You can find a one-bedroom apartment or a basement without windows for under $1,500, but I can promise you, you won't like the neighborhood and the neighbors. You will constantly walk in fear of personal safety for you and for your children. And I'm talking about a real bad neighborhood, not just Pakistani type bad neighborhoods. These are the neighborhoods with free-flowing drugs and weapons. Remember, owning weapons for US citizens is illegal, but not for the non-citizens. Now, basic bed, chairs, mattresses, bed sheets, utensils, etc. might cost you another around $1,000 to $2,000 at the cheapest. This does not include the transportation cost of carrying these things from the store wherever you bought it to your apartment. Utilities and miscellaneous charges. Setting up utilities, phone plan, electricity, gas, and other essentials might cost you at least $500 initially. Your overseas cell phone will not work here. So this was monthly. Now let me give you a breakdown of living expenses over 3 years, hoping you won't get caught in those 3 years in the first place. Rent. Assuming even a modest apartment at about $1,200 per month, over 3 years, this totals to about $42,000. Utilities and internet. Approximately $200 per month, that totals around $7,200 over 3 years. For a family of 4, for food, expect at least $400 per month. Just the bare minimum high carb, low protein food, totaling about $14,400 over 3 years. Forget the expensive mutton or fish at this budget. And now healthcare. Without access to insurance, medical insurance, even minor medical needs can be costly. Hospitals are required to take you in an emergency by law. But a toothache that is killing you inside is not an emergency for the hospital. And the doctors at private clinics are not required to see you without paying you at least $200 per visit. Cash just for a fever. An emergency fund for this sort of emergency is highly, highly suggested. Could run a couple of $1,000s. And now, transportation. Depending on the location, let's estimate at least $200 per month, including public transport and an occasional taxi ride here and there, totaling around another $7,200 over a span of 3 years. Now, the miscellaneous expenses, clothing, school supplies, and other minor essentials might add around another $200 per month, totaling another $7,200 over 3 years. This was all about the expenses. And now, let's get to the prospects of potential income from your undocumented employment. I've already told you about the most common jobs available for undocumented employees. These jobs might include construction, cleaning, working the farms, or restaurant work, or grocery stores, gas stations. I have seen many bankers, managers, professors come and work cleaning dishes in the restaurant kitchens, sell cigarettes and liquor bottles at grocery stores, or pump gas at petrol stations. These jobs almost always pay below minimum because of the undocumented status of the employee. So here is a breakdown of the possible income. If one adult works full-time, meaning you work full-time 40 hours per week at $10 per hour, you would earn about $1,600 per month before taxes or any other deductions. Over 3 years, this would total around $57,600. If 2 adults work, you and your wife, let's say, this could double. But then, where are you going to leave your children? The child care costs for the minor children left at home might then be added to the total expenses. And I'm talking about at least $600 to maybe $1,000 every month. So here's a summary. Initial costs ranging from $7,400 to $11,000, maybe $12,000. 3 years living expenses in total come around $102,000. And the potential 3-year income for 2 people is $115,000, hoping that one adult or both adults are working. And now the potential income for 3 years. If both adults are working, that comes to around $115,000 for 2 people, if both adults are working. So with $102,000 expenses over 3 years, you're making almost $115,000 in income. That leaves you $13,000 over 3 years. You do the math. So these are some important considerations. What I gave you are very rough estimates and can vary widely based on the location, personal circumstances, and changes in economic conditions. Living as an undocumented immigrant often involves unforeseen costs and risks, including the possibility of detention or deportation. Access to employment, healthcare, and other services is almost non-existent or severely limited, and often comes at a higher cost or lower quality for those without legal status. Now, let's turn to the prospects for undocumented children. The laws in most states allow for free education until high school for children, whether they are documented or not. Beyond that, in college, they are on their own. Once 18, they are equal in the eye of the law, and they can be deported alone if they are still undocumented. Beyond 18 years of age, their challenges will be the same as of their parents. Now, many of you might say, I have this cousin or this uncle who will take care of me. They will give us home. They will give us food for as long as we need. Now, that's a problem with the unlimited Pakistani hospitality. The host does not have the heart or the words to say no if a relative in need asks for it. And they don't have the gall to fully disclose the problems they will face for hosting undocumented guests for a long time. The legal troubles they might get themselves in. The financial burden it might put on them for hosting a family in their own apartment or house, unless they have a fairly large house, which is not common. They mess up their own American dream only because they can't tell upfront the truth about supporting an illegal way of settling in. It's a burden that can strain even the closest of relationships. So, what are the legal options? First and foremost, I strongly advise against using a visitor visa as a means to immigrate. But if you're already in the US or are considering your options, here is what you need to know. There are some legal paths to immigration. Employment-based options for changing status from a visitor visa to an immigrant visa in the United States are categorized into preference levels based on skills and qualifications. Here's a breakdown of these options and the typical qualifications required and the costs involved. Number 1, EB1 Priority Workers. The qualifications in this category include they should be outstanding professors, researchers, multinational executives, and those with extraordinary ability in arts, science, education, business, or athletics. The forms and costs involved with EB1 visa are: the employer must file the form I-140, immigrant petition for immigrant worker. The USCIS, the United States Customs and Immigration Service, filing fee for this EB1 visa is around $700, but legal and additional costs are not included in this. This is just the government fee. Number 2, EB2 category. These are reserved for professionals with advanced degree or exceptional ability. The qualifications include the applicants must generally have an advanced degree. We're talking about a doctoral degree, a PhD kind of a thing, or its equivalent, or exceptional ability in arts, sciences, or business. This category requires a labor certification. Most applicants need a job offer and a labor certificate from the Department of Labor proving no qualified U.S. workers are available for this position. The form again, Form I-140, is required with a filing fee of about $700. The labor certification process adds additional costs. EB3 is another employment-based category of immigrant visa for skilled or professional workers. The qualifications include the skilled worker with at least 2 years of specific job experience and professionals with US-based bachelor's degree or its foreign equivalent, and other workers for unskilled labor that isn't temporary or seasonal. Again, Labor certification required for most applications in EB3 category. Again, for Form I-140 with filing fee of about $700 plus the cost of labor certification and other legal fees. Number 4, EB4 Special Immigrants category. This includes a variety of special groups like certain religious workers, U.S. government abroad employees, and some other categories. This category, EB4, requires Form I-360, which is a petition for American widows or special immigrants, and the filing fee is $435. At number 5 is EB5 Investor category. The qualifications for investors who invest a substantial amount of capital. We are talking about at least $900,000 to $1.8 million, depending upon whichever area you are trying to settle in a new commercial enterprise that creates or preserves at least 10 full-time U.S. jobs for U.S. workers. The form for EB5 category is I-526, which is an immigration petition by alien investor with a filing fee of $3,675. And this does not include all the investment and the legal fee I just talked about. And then there are some other additional costs and considerations to pay some attention to. For example, adjustment of status. If you are eligible and in the US, you will file Form I-485, application to register and adjust status, which costs about $1,140 plus $85 for a biometrics fee. So coming around about $1,200. Legal fees can vary widely depending on the complexity of your case and the attorney rates. It can run into thousands and thousands of dollars. The processing time can be lengthy, years, especially for some categories with annual caps and high demand. You must be ready to show qualifications and the evidence in original. Extensive evidence is required to prove qualifications, including your academic records, letters of recommendation, proof of employment, and all of that. And these guys are very, very smart. They know the difference between the original documents and not so original documents. And while there is no official language requirement, proficiency in English is often necessary for any kind of employment in the US. In short, changing status from a visitor visa to an employment-based immigrant visa is complex, and it typically requires the applicant to be outside of the US or maintain a legal status while the application is being processed. Overstaying a visitor visa can lead to ineligibility for the status adjustment. So given the complexity, cost, and potential risk, it's crucial to consult with an immigration attorney who can provide guidance tailored to your specific situation and navigate the intricacies of employment-based immigration. These are all the employment-based visa types. And now at number 2, the family sponsorship visas, which are divided into 2 groups. 1, immediate relative immigrant visas. These visas have unlimited number of visas per year. These visa types are based on a close family relationship with a United States citizen, described as an immediate relative. The number of immigrants in these categories are not limited. Immediate relative visas types can include IR1, spouse of a U.S. citizen, husband or wife. IR2, unmarried children under 21 years of age of a U.S. citizen. IR3, orphan children adopted abroad by a U.S. citizen. IR4, orphan to be adopted in the U.S. by a U.S. citizen. IR5, parent of a U.S. citizen who himself or herself is at least 21 years old. These are all immediate relatives. And now, number 2, family preference immigrant visas for extended family. There's another category for those kinds of visas. These visas are limited to a maximum number of visas per year. These visa types are for specific, more distant family relationship with a U.S. citizen and some specified relationships with a green card holder. Since only a limited number of visas can be issued per year in these categories for extended family, that's why you hear about 15 years of wait time, sometimes even more, in this category. The family preference categories are family first preference, called F1, unmarried sons and daughters of US citizens and their minor children, but there is a maximum number of 23,400 visas per year in this category. F2, family second preference, spouses, minor children, and unmarried sons and daughters who are 18 years and above of green card holders. At least 77% of all visas available for this category will go to the spouses and children in this category. The remainder is allocated to the unmarried sons and daughters, totaling 114,200 visas per year in this category of F2. Family third preference, F3, married sons and daughters of US citizens and their spouses and minor children. There's a maximum of 23,400 visas per year in this category of F3. Family fourth preference, F4, brothers and sisters of US citizens and their spouses and minor children, provided the US citizens are at least 21 years of age. This category of F4 has a total maximum of 65,000 visas per year. Note, grandparents, aunts, uncles, in-laws, and cousins cannot sponsor a relative for immigration. Still, in some extremely special circumstances, like victims of crimes and persecution, there's an asylum or U visa to seek life in the US, but you have to prove your victim case. Wrapping all this up, each of these paths comes with its own set of challenges and requirements. They're not easy, and they're not quick, but they are legal and far safer than living in the shadows. And remember, the cost of illegal immigration isn't just monetary. It's about your peace of mind, your future, and your family's well-being. Before I wrap it up, remember I told you about the Tosif family at the beginning of this video? He paid an attorney almost $8,000 out of the $35,000 he had for an employment-based visa. His case was denied, and by then, he had already overstayed his visit visa. He was detained and deported back to Pakistan. His family left for Pakistan separately, quietly. After spending most of his money and having stayed almost a month in the deportation jail, he is now back in Lahore looking for a new job. So, my dear friend, the wish and the journey to a better life is a journey worth taking, but it must be taken on the right path. As tempting as shortcuts may be, they lead to more dangers than destinations. I urge you all, think carefully, plan wisely, and seek legal routes. Your dream is valid, but the path you choose to achieve it should be valid too. Stay informed, stay safe, and remember, your life and your dignity are worth more than any risk that you take. Thank you for watching. If you or someone you know is considering this path, share this video with them as a word of caution. Let's spread awareness and help each other make informed decisions. So, until the next video, I am Dr. Saleem signing out from Subah Subah, America se. So long.